Hello everyone, it's Stella.
And Tarrant from the Dice Tower.
Thanks for joining us.
Today we'll be teaching you how to play Imperial Twing, game designed by Chris Young and Andres Vista and published by Imperial Games. We are using a prototype copy of the game, and so the rules and components may not be final.
Let's get to it.
Imperial Twing is a card game played by witches, wizards and sorcerers, in which the players battle to become the Vice Archmage of the Empire. Players will collect cats and critters, and engage each other in magical battles to earn the magical oracles they need to take control of the magical objects. Control 3 magical objects of differing colours and you'll enter the endgame, and be the first to strip all others of their objects and you'll be the winner. There are 4 decks of cards in Imperial Twing. The magical objects, which are green, the events, which are red, the characters, which are purple, and the playing cards, by far the largest of the decks, which are blue. Shuffle each deck face down. Deal each player 1 character card face up, returning the rest to the box. Each player should take the matching coloured 12-sided Orn die. Your character's colour will match the colour of some of the cards in the playing cards and magical objects decks, and your character will be stronger in that colour through the game. Place the playing cards and event cards in the centre of the table, each with room for a discard pile. Place the magical object deck and flip the top 2 cards face up. Place the supply of Oracle tokens nearby. Deal each player a starting hand of 3 playing cards. Players roll their dice to choose the first player, and that player decides whether you'll take turns in clockwise or anti-clockwise order throughout the entire game. You're now ready to play. Imperial Twing is played in turns, starting from the first player and going round in the chosen order until the end of the game is reached. Your turn is broken into 2 steps. First, drawing a card, and then second, taking an action, which could be to pass and draw a second card, to play a trap, to attack or duel an opponent, or to buy a magical object. When you draw a card, you simply take the top card from the playing card deck and add it to your hand. There is no hand limit. However, there are 3 golden rules which apply to the cards in your hand, and these apply at all times, whether it's your turn, someone else's turn, or even during setup. The first is that if you ever draw a critter, that's a card whose name is in the bottom left corner, then you must take it out of your hand and play it face up on the table in front of you into what's called your entourage. That means your hand can only ever be made up of traps and cats, which have this triangle shape, or spells which have a number and the same number of symbols in the field. The second is that if your hand ever contains no spells, and this can be either because it's full of cats and traps or your hand is empty, then you must draw cards from the deck until you have 1 spell in hand. If you draw a critter, cat or trap while doing this, discard it and continue drawing until you get a spell. Thirdly, there are 4 colours of spell in the game: green, blue, white and red. If you ever have all 4 colours in your hand at once, then you must choose one of those colours to discard. You can only ever hold 3 different colours at a time. Since the contents of your hand are secret, it is up to all players to make sure they comply with these 3 golden rules at all times. After doing your free card draw to start your turn, you'll take 1 action. One option is to pass and draw a second card. Your second option is to play a trap card on another player. This lets you choose any 1 critter in that player's entourage and then discard it with the trap to the discard pile. The exception to this is if you choose to target a critter that is the same colour as your character. If you do that, discard the trap, but then add the trapped critter to your own entourage. The third and major action is to attack another player. When you do this, you will cast a spell at an opponent, engaging them in battle with the winner to earn 1 oracle, which can be spent as one of the ways of gaining magical objects. To attack, choose your opponent, and then choose a spell from your hand to play. This can be 1, 2, or 3 cards of the same colour. You may then optionally support the spell with up to 1 matching coloured critter card from your entourage per card in the spell. In this case, blue could add 0, 1, or 2 critters to the battle, but not all 3. The exception to this is if one of your critters is a mount, indicated by the letter M. A mount may carry on its back 1 other matching coloured critter of equal or lesser power without that carried critter counting towards the critter limit. The warhorse could carry this dwarf, but the Wolpertinger could not. Your opponent must now defend the attack, and may choose whether to defend with magic or without. When defending with magic, the opponent makes exactly the same choice that the attacker just made, chooses a spell of up to 3 cards from hand, and optionally supports it with up to 1 critter per card, which can include critters carried by mounts. To defend without magic, the defender chooses any number of critters of 1 colour to play into the battle. If both players played spells, then both players roll their own dice. If the defender used no magic, only the attacker rolls the die. These dice represent the randomness and uncertainty of using magic. If you don't like your die roll, you may discard a cat from hand to re-roll a die. You may do this any number of times you can afford, but must ultimately keep your final die roll. If your die roll shows the spiral Orn symbol, then you must draw, resolve, and discard the top card from the event deck. This may impact the result of the fight. Either player may spend traps from their hands to discard opposing players' critters from the battle. The target critter must be in the fight and must go to the discard pile. You cannot take it to your own entourage if it matches your colour. Finally, determine the result. Add up the values on all of the cards that you still have in the battle, as well as the value on your Orn die. The event symbol, if you rolled it, counts as 0. The player with the higher value wins. If one player rolls a sun, this is a critical hit and that player automatically wins. And if a player rolls an X, that's a critical fail and that player automatically loses. If the players' values are tied, or both roll critical hits, or both roll critical fails, then the fight is a draw. The winner of the fight, regardless of whether it was attacker or defender, earns 1 ornicle from the supply. The exception is a defender who launched a non-magical defense. Ornicles are innately magical. If you don't cast a spell, you don't qualify to get one. Then both players discard the spell cards that were used in the fight, and the loser also discards any critters from that fight. If the fight was tied, neither player gains an ornicle, both players discard spells, and neither player discards critters. Your character has extra skills in spells of your own colour, and so you'll get 2 extra advantages when you use your colour in a fight. The first is that any roll of a negative number on the Orn dice counts as if it were a 0. Although critical fails are still critical fails, it's always possible for a spell to go wrong. The second is if you were the attacker and you lose the fight, you discard the spells but not the critters who were in the fight. They are protected and will stay with you for future fights. When there are more than 2 players in the game, the non-active players can get involved in one of these attacks. A player who wants to get involved must first stake 1 ornicle, and may then add 1 spell card from their hand or critter from their entourage into the battle as long as its colour matches the colour that's being supported. Multiple players could get involved and could support the same or different teams. If there's uneven support, then the player who had less support may add 1 extra card matching their colour from their own hand or entourage for each imbalanced support. If the team you supported wins, then you get your staked oracles back, and all players in that winning team gain 1 new oracle. If everyone else teamed up against you but you still win, then in addition to the oracle from the supply, you gain all the staked oracles. Once the fight is over, your turn is finished. Make sure all players in the fight remember the golden rule to draw a new spell if their hand has no spells in it. This means that no matter how often you attack or are attacked, a magical attack or defense is always possible. The aim of Imperial Twing is to gain magical objects, and the fourth option for the action on your turn is to buy one of the 2 face-up magical objects from the supply by spending 5 oracles. Add the card to your tableau separate to your critters, and then replenish it with the next card from the top of the deck. Magical objects will have an ongoing passive ability for the player who has them in their tableau. For example, here the opponent would not be able to use a cat for a reroll in battles against this player. You would be allowed to do 1 free reroll as if you had a cat to play every time you defended. You could add an extra critter to each battle, or opponents would not be allowed to play traps on your critters. You may hold any number of magical objects that you like, but only 3 of their passive abilities can be in use at any time. You can swap which ones are in use at any time except for during a battle. There are 2 other ways to gain magical objects. The first is to discard 3 cat cards from your hand to take the top card from the magical object deck. This is only available as long as there are still cards in this deck. The second is to duel an opponent to steal their object. On your turn, as your attack action, instead of doing a single attack, you will challenge another player to a duel, and you will stake 1 oracle from your supply on that duel. You'll now do 3 complete fights against that player, with you as the attacker and the other as the defender, discarding the spell cards and critters, and redrawing if your hand is out of spells between each fight. Unlike a normal attack, no other player may support in a duel. If the attacker wins at least 2 out of the 3 fights, then the attacker gets the oracle back and steals a magical object of their choice from the opponent. If the defender successfully defends at least 2 out of the 3 fights, then the defender takes the oracle. A drawn fight counts as a successful defense, and if the outcome of the duel is known after the first 2 fights, there is no need to fight the third. Once a player holds at least 3 different colours of magical object, including the special non-elemental Teddy of Agony object, that player may choose to enter endgame. Multiple players may be in endgame at the same time, and if you ever cease to qualify for endgame, then you go back to playing regularly. Once a player has entered endgame, any players with no magical objects are eliminated. When the player who is in endgame launches an attack, they make a special simultaneous attack against all other players. Play 1 set of spell cards and 1 supporting set of critters. The others independently defend and, unlike a normal attack, cannot team up. All players roll their own dice, resolving events if necessary, and then the endgame player's total is separately compared against each of the defending players. The endgame player can steal 1 magic object from each losing opponent, while each successful defense earns 1 oracle. For the defending players, cards are discarded as normal, while the endgame player discards cards as if they're the winning player only if they beat every other player in that combat. Here there was 1 defeat, so the critter would be defeated as if the endgame player had lost a regular battle. Players continue to be eliminated once they've run out of magical objects, and the last player standing is the winner. And that's how to play Imperial Twing.
Check out the project page. We'll put the link in the description below so you can check it out. Thank you so much for watching. Everything you do will help us. Every single view, every time you like the video, let us know if you have any questions and comments, and see you next time.